Hi! Today we will have a mix of what I really love. It is a forest and a flower project after all, but as you have already seen in the preview, these letters are like pieces of ice. It's like spring breaks through winter. Any project starts with the idea, and the idea for this panel or plate, I don't know, I got from this picture. Actually, this idea of letters and dry flowers has become really popular, and it's quite explainable, because it looks pretty. But I decided to improve it a little, with lights. By the way, you can stop sending me photos with huge resin letters and dry flowers, because I already have such a mold, and in summer I will definitely make something using it. I bought such thin fairy lights on AliExpress. It's the same as you often see in my background. It's quite good, runs on batteries, but this time I took a shorter one than before. It is just 2 meters long with only 20 lights, and it's awesome. The only disadvantage is that the gaps between the lights are too long, and this is too much for the letters, so I asked my friend to help me. We decided to cut it and resolder. Before casting, we had to check, was my plan even going to work? And yeah, after we had shortened the wire, the light kept being on. It means we can get to letters. In a cooking shop in France, I bought such silicone letters, and some of these I've already started casting. There are also alphabet molds on AliExpress. For example, I bought this one. It is glossy inside, and what is convenient is that every letter is doubled. However, the fonts are different. I made my first table using this mold. You might saw it in my old videos. As always, all the links are in the description. I need just a little of resin this time, because I won't cast the letters to the full, so I'm going to mix it in the plastic cup from the set. I pour resin, then the hardener, mix them together and leave it for a while, till all the bubbles are out. And now I'm going to prepare flowers. I have quite a lot of them this time. In the description I will leave the links to these flowers. Those who have been watching my videos for a long time probably know many of these flowers. The technique is quite simple. I pour resin up to the half of the mold and place the dry flowers. After that I leave it till it's completely hard. After that you can attach the lights. The first several lights were perfectly fixed in the letters with the help of UV resin. In future, I plan to cast these letters again with epoxy resin, but the lights will be inside, so I didn't take out the letters. According to my plan, I entirely cut the fairy lights into separate lights and began to attach them, so that it would help me to solder them right, measuring the length of the wires between the letters correctly. So I was gradually filling the letters with lights, and then I got a feeling that it looked like I was making a motherboard, which is a green one, but in my case I had a silicone mold, resin and a flashlight. To better fix everything, I even put the mold under the lamp to be sure that everything hardened. And we even started soldering, but it was quite difficult. Later I will explain why. At a certain point, we decided to check whether it was working, But it wasn't. We totally forgot, I hadn't even thought about it, that wires have different polarity. In the fairy lights there are two wires with different polarity, with plus and with minus. If you accidentally confuse them, nothing will work. And it was our case. Just by looking at a wire, you can't determine the polarity. It meant that everything I attached to the letters, everything which my friend had been soldering so carefully, we had to tear off. Hopefully, I had used UV resin, which is not that secure. We started managing the lights in the way to make them work, but then I decided that it would be much easier if I just took the new fairy lights and avoid cutting them this time. Such 2-meter lights cost just a little bit more than $1, although the second fairy lights I prepared for another project, but it's okay, I will wait for the third one from AliExpress. I attached all the lights on the resin, not separating them, and this time I didn't simply pour a drop for each light, I poured more resin on the back side of a letter to make everything more secure. In the end, to make everything even more secure, I put it under the lamp for 5 minutes. After that, I measured by eye which size I wanted, and using a ruler, I drew a triangle. Its size was 20 cm by 8 cm. With the help of the Dremel disc, I cut it off. To be honest, not quite evenly, but the future grinding will fix it. I made the edges even and smoothed both sides and the corners. After that, I decided to make the corners even smoother, and my boyfriend showed me how to better do so. And here we go, with the shiny letters and such smooth corners. Now we need to connect everything. The batteries for the light I was planning to attach behind, so I had to make a small hole for the wire. I put the base on the thick silicone mold and, using a Dremel, I made a tiny hole. And yeah, keeping in mind the width of the plywood and the length of my drill bit, I knew that I won't mess up neither the silicone mold nor the table. Up, and the hole is ready. Next, I took my good old wood stain. It has no smell and it's perfect for their inner work. I put my plate on the same silicone mold to make the process more comfortable. When the front side dried up, I painted the back side as well. After that, I needed to run the wire through the hole, and for this, I need to cut the wire. Well, and immediately solder everything back. Do you remember when I told you that these wires are difficult to solder? It is so due to the fact that they are covered in some kind of a protective varnish. We have two wires with different polarity, plus and minus, with the direct current inside. It is direct because of the batteries, and the alternating current is where? You're right, it's in a socket. A microphysics lesson from Masha. And if these two small wires connect or touch each other, it will cause the short circuit, and it is a dangerous thing. That is the reason why these wires are isolated from each other with rubber or polymer shell. But here we have none of this. In fact, we simply don't see it. And because of this varnish, it is difficult to solder the wires. So we need to get rid of it instead of burning it, as well as we did before exposing the wires. And here you can see how this varnish is melting. Then I check which wire I need to connect, remembering about the polarity to be able to turn on the lights after that, and then I solder the wires. The wires are twisting together, and to secure everything and to make a better contact, I cover them with melted solder, such a wire which is easy to melt. To make solder stick to wires better, use rosin. It is this thing in the yellow container. I was soldering for the first time after looking at my friend doing so. Plus, the solder in no way wanted to stick to the wires, even when my boyfriend tried doing it, so please don't judge me too severely. But I was quite happy with the result anyway. Because what's important is to make everything work right, and neatness here is a question of practice. Our wires go after batteries, but before diodes, to prevent the short circuit, so it's really important to isolate the wires from each other. Here, the same silicone mold and UV resin helped me. I used this resin to cover the wire. Next, I come back to the letters. I needed to twist and bend the long wires under the letters to make everything like this. And the last A letter was left soldered from the first fairy lights. So here I also isolated the wires with a thin layer of resin. By the way, this time I did it much better. Next, I curl the wires down under the letter, and now we can start attaching them. For this I need to figure out where I should start to place the letters on center. After that we can use hot glue. To fix everything, I had to wait till the glue was cool under every letter, and after that I could go on with the next one. Indeed, the letters looked like tiny pieces of ice, but I extremely disliked that the wires were seen. Of course, I could complicate everything and make lots of holes and run the wires through without cutting them and curl them down there. But I decided to use my indispensable attribute of forest projects – moss. Thanks to it, the letters were glued down. In fact, as well as in travnik. But the effect of ice, I think, was a bit lost. Well, the letters itself were hidden a bit under the moss, but they started shining more than they used to. So this was the case when I doubted whether I had done everything right by adding moss. The last things to do were to attach the wire behind to avoid accidental pulling and glue the battery box to the plate. I simply curled down the wire and fixed it with a clip. To be honest, at first I attached the box quite low, so as a result I had to attach it to the center. I left the clip on the box to be able in future to take this box and change the batteries. So this is the table I made. I suppose you can't see it well, because it is quite bright. Well, in general, I'm really happy about it. So I hope this video was interesting and useful for you. I love you this much. Bye.